You know that moment when you start watching a show, and a few episodes in, you realize you might have made a big mistake? That's exactly how I felt watching Mrs. Playmen. It's one of those series that starts with promise, an interesting premise, talented actors, and stylish visuals. But somewhere in the middle, it just collapses under its own weight. My name is Lee, and today I'm going to tell you whether you should spend your 7 valuable hours watching Mrs. Playmen or skip it entirely. This is a spoiler free review, so relax, nothing will be ruined for you. Let's start with the negatives because, honestly, there are quite a few. The series has 7 episodes, each running for around 50 minutes. Now, that doesn't sound too bad on paper, right? But the pacing is painfully slow. If there were a race between this series and a turtle, Mrs. Playman would probably come in second. It's that slow. There are long stretches where practically nothing happens, and you're left wondering if this story even needed 7 episodes to begin with. It feels like it could have been told just as effectively, probably even better in a much tighter 5 or 6 episode format. The story is inspired by real events, focusing on the journey of Playmen magazine and its founder fighting for success in an era when governments and conservatives were cracking down on erotic content, nudity, and sexual expression. On paper, that's an interesting setup. There's potential for drama, social commentary, and insight into cultural hypocrisy. Unfortunately, the execution just doesn't live up to that potential. The makers try to use creative liberties to spice up the screenplay, but it doesn't really add any depth or freshness to the narrative. For a show set across the 1980s and 1990s, the visual tone could have done a lot more heavy lifting. The cinematography is decent, but doesn't transport you to that era. The color grading, in particular, feels flat and doesn't capture the texture or vibe of those decades. You should feel immersed in the time period, the smoke-filled rooms, flashing neon signs and shifting moral attitudes. But instead, it all feels oddly modern and detached. One of the big themes of Mrs. Playman is the clash between conservative Christian ideology and the subject of sexuality. It's about how society reacts when personal freedom and moral policing collide. Now, it's clear that the series wanted to make a socially bold statement about hypocrisy and censorship, but it never really lands that punch. The messaging feels muddled, and because of the sluggish pacing, it loses emotional grip. You find yourself disengaging before the story even builds momentum. It wants to be provocative, but instead, it ends up just being dull. Now, to be fair, the show isn't entirely without merit. Let's talk about the positives. The performances are genuinely impressive across the board. Every actor brings nuance and authenticity to their character. Even if the story isn't compelling enough, the cast does their best to pull you back in. The character development is handled with care. You can see the effort in how motivations evolve, especially for the lead roles. But again, the length and pacing undercut what could have been a sharp and emotionally resonant drama. If only the creators had trimmed down the narrative, tightened the script, and improved the pacing through sharper editing, Mrs. Playman could have been a hidden gem. The raw material was there: ambition, performances, and an intriguing real-life backdrop, but it never came together into something memorable or entertaining. So, to sum it up, Mrs. Playman is a show that tries hard to be bold and intellectual, but ends up being slow, stretched, and somewhat directionless. You might appreciate the performances, and you might even admire the attempt at tackling complex social themes, but you'll probably also find yourself checking the clock a little too often. My final rating for Mrs. Playman is 2 out of 5 stars. It's not completely unwatchable, but it's far from engaging. If you've already gone through all your favorite series on Netflix and there's absolutely nothing else to watch, maybe give it a try, but otherwise, you're not missing much. That's it for this review. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, drop your thoughts in the comments, and let me know which movie or show you'd like me to review next. Don't forget to subscribe for more such content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.